Hello, dear friends. No one is a prophet in his own land, but he lives better at home. The wise man knows the world without leaving his home, wrote Lao Tzu. Opinion P. Exiles, refugees, ostracism, digital exile, romantic exiles, cultural identity, return to origins, ascetic dimension, sense of belonging, exile of YouTubers, exile as punishment, tax exile in Andorra, connection with nature, spiritual exile of mystics, transforming experience, uprooting can be harmful, benefits of keeping the roots, globalism wants us uprooted. The reed mounts its separation from the reed bed. Let's start. An exile is an expatriate for political or economic reasons. Among the ancient Athenians, political exile meant ostracism, that is, a removal from any political or social responsibility or role through isolation, seclusion, exclusion, marginalization, estrangement, isolation, and confinement. The exiles of YouTubers has increased in recent years for various economic and physical reasons, social pressure, and controversy. Many content creators seek to reside in countries with more favorable tax systems. For example, places like Andorra have attracted YouTubers due to their low tax burden compared to countries like Spain or France, where income taxes are much higher. This allows them to maximize their earnings. Some YouTubers simply decide to move to another country where they have more creative freedom, better access to technology, or greater economic stability. YouTuber exile refers to YouTube content creators who have had to leave their home countries, generally for reasons such as political pressure or censorship, threats or harassment, legal issues related to their content, and financial or personal safety issues. Unlike traditional political exile, the conflict is often linked to the social and media impact of what they publish. Hostile environment. The increase in cancellations and criticism of influencers has created a hostile environment for some creators. Legal scandals, accusations of opportunism, or exploitation of sensitive topics have led several YouTubers to seek digital exile to protect their public image or escape social scrutiny. Furthermore, some governments have begun to regulate content created by minors or influencers, which can also influence their decision to emigrate. The relocation of YouTubers to countries with tax benefits has generated public controversy, accusing them of being unsupportive or unpatriotic. However, these movements also reflect individual freedom to seek better economic conditions. These cases show how exile can be both an economic and personal strategy to adapt to the demands of the digital industry. Romantic exiles are those individuals who, having been forced to leave their country for political, social, or personal reasons, experience exile with a mixture of nostalgia, idealism, and a poetic or passionate vision of both the country they left and their situation as exiles. The term is often associated with 19th century figures, especially European romantics, who viewed exile not only as a tragedy, but also as a way to reaffirm their values, create freedom, or political ideals. The Exile of YouTubers has something romantic about it in a certain sense, especially if you see romance as an individual struggle for ideals, freedom, speech freedom, or a kind of rebellion against the system. However, it can also simply be a practical or forced decision, more pragmatic than poetic. Roots. No one is a prophet in his own land, but he lives better in their own home. People are often not valued or recognized in their place of origin, but the comfort and security of being in one's own home is irreplaceable. Every human being feels most comfortable when they belong where they belong, even though they may not always receive the recognition they deserve there. The wise man knows the world without leaving his home, said Lao Tzu. This belief promotes introspection and self-knowledge as ways to achieve fulfillment and understand the world. According to this perspective, true learning and understanding don't depend on physical displacement, but rather on a deep connection with one's own being and with the Tao. Traveling can help you further appreciate your roots by comparing them with other cultures and lifestyles. When you return home, you can share your ventures and acquired knowledge, enriching your local community. Even when you are far away, you can keep your cultural connection alive by celebrating festivals or practicing traditions from your homeland. Traveling can be an enriching experience that opens the mind and allows you to discover new cultures and landscapes. However, maintaining a connection to your homeland's roots is equally valuable. This connection can provide a sense of belonging, identity, and rootedness that is difficult to find elsewhere. In short, traveling and maintaining your roots are not mutually exclusive. The two experiences can complete each other to enrich your personal and cultural life. Knowing that you belong, you can provide emotional stability and a sense of security. Knowing and preserving the traditions, customs, and values of your homeland helps you better understand who you are and where you come from. This can strengthen your personal and cultural identity. Maintaining ties with family and the local community can offer emotional support and a network of meaningful relationships. Often, your roots are deeply tied to the natural environment of your childhood, which can foster respect and love for the environment. Punishment. Exile has been used as a form of punishment in ancient societies such as Rome, Greece, and other cultures. For example, in Rome, exile was an alternative to capital punishment. It could be voluntary or forced, and depending on the severity, it entailed the loss of citizenship and property. In Greece, ostracism was a form of political exile where individuals deemed dangerous to the stability of a city were expelled for a period of 10 years. In other cultures, exile could be a devastating sentence, separating the individual from their community, resources, and social status, making it difficult for them to survive and reintegrate. However, exile is not always a punishment. In some cases, it can be voluntary and serve as a political protest, a search for safety, or even an opportunity for reflection and reinvention. Historical examples include figures such as the Dalai Lama or Benazir Bhutto, who used their time in exile to advance their causes or continue their legacy. In short, Exile can be both a punishment imposed by authorities and a transformative experience depending on the political, social and personal depending on the political, social and personal context. Uprooting. With the development of so-called civilization, the unique and vibrant color of each country and its indigenous peoples is increasingly forgotten. But this was the main goal of the globalists, to completely dispersonalize the earth, because a brilliant individuality, whether a person or a country, is a great danger to them, according to Peter B. Mayer. They have been very interested in rewriting history to deprive human beings of their roots, which carry specific energetic code and nourish the soul of each individual. The energetic characteristics of each country can be compared to a color palette. Many of you who have traveled the world at different times have probably noticed how the atmosphere has changed in many countries. Sometimes it is difficult to understand where you are because everything has become so similar. The advertising, the stores, the restaurants, the people dressed the same, etc. But until recently, each country was proud of its uniqueness and its national traditions. Energetic impersonality is detrimental to the overall energy of the planet because it disrupts the energetic balance. The more diverse the energetic palette, the more valuable each planet is. Planet Earth is unique precisely because of its racial, natural and cultural diversity. It is not for nothing that it is called the pearl of the universe. The fact that our planet was chosen for a unique experiment, a transition to a higher dimension with its inhabitants, is of course no coincidence. The goal is to preserve its richness, its unique flora and fauna, its beautiful nature, and the finest representatives of humankind who carry the divine principle within them. The uniqueness of each country is precisely one of the components of this amazing, exceptional and beautiful world that the Draconians have been trying to destroy for centuries. Mystical exile. The concept of a spiritual exile among mystics is related to the idea of separation from the divine origin and the longing to return to it. This phenomenon is present in various spiritual and philosophical traditions, such as Sufism, Christianity, and other mystical currents. Spiritual exile is described as a state of alienation of the soul from its divine origin. In the Sufi tradition, this feeling of separation is expressed in text such as the Song of Danae, where the reed laments its separation from the reed bed, symbolizing the suffering of the soul away from its divine source. This exile not only implies sadness and nostalgia, but also an opportunity to transcend and reach a higher state of union with the divine. In Christian mysticism, authors such as Saint Teresa of Jesus and Saint John of the Cross used the metaphor of exile to refer to earthly life as a punishment compared to heavenly life. For then, human existence finds meaning in the process of inner purification and the journey toward God, which entail trials similar to the self-annihilation described in other traditions. Ascetic dimension. Spiritual exile shares characteristics with the mystical journey, especially in its ascetic aspects. In this process, the soul must detach itself from all earthly things to reach a state of emptiness. Gnosis in the Christian tradition, Fana in Sufism, Sunyata in Buddhism, which precedes communion with the sacred. This emptiness is paradoxically seen as a fullness that allows the soul to become a receptacle of the divine. For example, Saint John of the Cross describes this process as a dark night, during which the human being experiences a profound purification that lets him or her to shed his or her desires and reach his or her true self, centered exclusively on God. The notion of returning to the origin is central to mystical narrative. In Sufism, this return symbolizes the reunification of the soul with its true homeland, which is the divine world. According to this perspective, the soul was sent to the earthly world against its will to acquire knowledge and experience before returning to its original state of happiness and perfection. In more universal terms, both physical and spiritual exile represents an initiatory journey into a known dimension of existence. This journey involves overcoming trials and facing loneliness and emptiness before achieving a spiritual revelation or rebirth. Spiritual exile is a powerful metaphor that connects human experiences of loss and uprooting with the mystical processes of transformation and transcendence. From a mystical perspective, this exile is not only a painful separation, but also an opportunity to discover new dimensions of being and to approach the divine through an ascetic path full of challenges, but also sublime promises. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.